First comment here, great refresher for us old dogs. Really enjoyed this, and thank you from TJ Kelly in Panama City Beach. Thank you, TJ. I appreciate that. You know what? Most of what we do in radio isn't new. It's things that we all kind of knew in the past. It's things that we've done before. And it's really important that we review those things because we forget how important they are. It's a lot of times we forget how we've become successful. Really helps with my regional voice tracking issues. You know, I was going to bring that up, Rich, in talking about personalities who voice track. First of all, I've got no problem with voice tracking. I think voice tracking can sound great. You get better personalities for management. You can get them for a little bit less money. If you're a voice tracker and you're voice tracking other stations, man, sound as local and as personal as you possibly can. Because every time you lay down a voice track, you're creating a local break for that station. And if you do a great job voice tracking, you're going to sound better than they do locally. And if you practice the Izes and you put some of those Izes into it, it can really sizzle. Nice message here from Arcadia Smith. This is awesome. I'm a radio beauty journalist, and this helps me develop my personality. Thank you very much. I'm glad that helps. Scott asks, any tips on how to best incorporate texts from listeners on the show? Sometimes names are available. Most of the time, they're not. Yeah, that's a great question, Scott. Yeah, I know most listeners are communicating more by text now than they are by telephone. And I think that's just the way that people are living their lives now. And it's definitely here to stay. It's not going to change. That's how they like to communicate. But it doesn't help us that much on the radio. There's nothing that sounds better than a caller that's saying the same thing, unless that caller doesn't sound very good, of course. If you're going to incorporate texts and use them, there's a couple of things that you can do. One tactic that some stations use is they'll text the texter back and say, love what you had to say here. Can I call you in 5 minutes and put you on the air? So you get their voice on the air, because it's a lot more interesting to have a conversation than to read them a text. And that's really effective. It's one more hoop for you to jump through, but it really can sound great on the air. So I would highly recommend looking into doing some things like that. If you're going to read the text, I would summarize the text, kind of put it into your own words. Nothing wrong with assigning a name to it, even though you don't have the name there. Assign a name to it, that's fine. That texter may call you back and say, hey, wait a minute, my name isn't Jeremy. Well, no, I didn't know what your name was, though, and it just makes it sound more personal when they say that. And so, you know, next time, tell me who you are. But I would try, in most cases, to get them on the air with their voice. It always sounds better. Question from Steve. I always wonder what is too much. For instance, maybe I'll talk about something artist related coming out of a song. Then when the break ends, the next segment or the next element is a produced comedy bit, maybe 30 to 45 seconds. And then the stop set starts. What are your thoughts on that execution? It all depends. Steve, my answer to just about everything is it depends. One of the things I learned a long time ago in programming is that we impose a lot of rules that may be good principles, but the same rules don't apply in all situations. So I have standards and guidelines. You know, some personalities can make multiple topics work really well in the same break. I know there's a general programming philosophy of one thought per break, but I've heard some really great talent that's able to do 2 or 3 different thoughts in a break and make it seamless. It's how you construct it and how you bridge and how you transition from one thought to the next that makes the difference. And one tactic, but when I talked about using your voice in inflecting and your tempo and punctuation, the better you are at those principles, the more topics you can put on, the more thoughts you can put on in the same break. Because if you run everything together and you're speaking at the same tempo, the same energy, the same timbre, everything runs together and it gets really confusing and it's hard for the audience to sort it out. But if you're pausing and if you're inflecting and if you're using your voice as a tool, yeah, you can talk about multiple things in the same break. It's just a matter of making it all make sense to the listener. So work with it and see what works best for you. And if you want to send me a segment, send me a break, Steve, just email it to me, tracy@tjohnsonmediagroup.com. I'll listen to it and I'll give you some feedback specifically on what you're doing, tell you what I think about that break and how it might work for you. It's your job as the host. If you're a host of a party and there's a lot of things happening at the party, your job as the host is to make it all make sense for your guests. So there's a theme that runs through it. It's kind of the same thing on the air. Your job on the air is to make sure that everything that you're doing on the air is that your audience gets it. Nice note from Mark saying, thanks. As GM, it will inspire me to discuss with our talents. Please bring your talent to the webinar on demand. Let them watch it. And you guys talk about different ways you could do it. Another thing you can do with talent, if you're a general manager, you're a program director, bring your talent together and brainstorm these things. Talk about how you can Ize content, come up with different ideas, different lists, and help each other out. A lot of times collaboration is the best way to really get creative. Arcadia comes back and says, great advice on how to connect with my demographic and then trust my content and be relatable. Yeah, you got to trust your content. One of the things that I believe for all personalities is it isn't so much about the topics that you're talking about. It's about the way that you talk about it. It's the stories that you tell and the way that you relate to the audience. It's not so much about topic selection. Your topics have to be good, but your stories have to be better.